In the shifting sands of time, countless stories lie buried, waiting to be unearthed. We often speak of Tutankhamun, Cleopatra, and Ramses the Great, but tonight we journey back further to a chapter of Egyptian history shrouded in mystery and blood, a story of a king whose death was not an end, but a brutal, world-changing beginning. This is the tale of the forgotten curse of Pharaoh Seqen-Enerdau. Our story begins in the 16th century BC, a time of division and turmoil. Egypt, the once mighty empire, was fractured. The northern lands, from the Nile Delta down to Memphis, were under the iron grip of foreign invaders known as the Hyksos. These rulers of foreign lands had brought with them new technologies of war, the horse-drawn chariot, and the composite bow tools that the native Egyptians had never seen. For over a century, they ruled Lower Egypt, imposing their culture and their gods. Meanwhile, in the south, a line of native Egyptian pharaohs held on, ruling from the city of Thebes. They were weakened, forced to pay tribute to their northern overlords. It was a time of humiliation, a shadow cast over the land of the gods. But within the royal court of Thebes, a spark of rebellion was about to ignite. This spark was a man named Seqen-Enerdau. We know little of his early life, but inscriptions paint a picture of a king with a lion's heart, unwilling to bow before foreign masters. He was not just a ruler, he was a symbol of hope for a subjugated people. Ancient texts, like the quarrel of Apepi and Seqen-Ener, tell a tale, likely part propaganda, of the Hyksos king Apepi sending a bizarre complaint to Thebes. He claimed the roaring of the hippopotami in a sacred pool hundreds of miles away was disturbing his sleep. It was a clear taunt, a test of Seqen-Ener's resolve. Was he a mere vassal, or a true king of Egypt? This thinly veiled insult was the final straw. Seqen-Enerdau would not be mocked. He gathered his armies, rallying the men of Upper Egypt under the banner of liberation. He knew the odds were stacked against him. The Hyksos were a formidable military power, entrenched and well-equipped. But for Seqen-Ener, freedom was a cause worth dying for. The war to reclaim Egypt had begun. The exact details of his campaigns are lost to time, but we can imagine the fierce clashes across the desert plains. Thebans, armed with traditional axes and spears, charging against the terrifying new sight of war chariots thundering across the battlefield. It was a brutal, desperate struggle. Seqen-Ener was not a pharaoh directing his troops from the safety of his palace. He was a warrior king fighting on the front lines alongside his men. His courage was infectious, inspiring a generation to rise up and fight for their homeland. But courage on the battlefield comes at a terrible price. Sometime around 1558 BC, the war reached its bloody climax for the brave king. And it is here, in his death, that our story takes its most chilling turn. In 1881, a royal cache of mummies was discovered at Deir el-Bahari. Among the greatest pharaohs of the New Kingdom lay one body, hastily and poorly mummified, its face locked in an eternal scream. This was the mummy of Seqen-Enerdau. For over a century, his death was a puzzle. His body told a story of unimaginable violence. Modern forensic analysis using CT scans has allowed us to become silent witnesses to his final moments. The evidence is horrifying. He was not killed in a single, honorable blow. He was swarmed, overwhelmed, and executed. The first blow from an axe struck his forehead, splitting the bone. He likely fell to his knees, stunned. Another blow from above, possibly from an attacker on foot or horseback, shattered his cheek and nose. A third attack, perhaps with a mace, crushed the bone above his right eye. But the king was still alive, fighting for every last breath. The final, fatal blows came as he lay on his side. A spear or dagger was thrust into the base of his skull, and a battle axe delivered a massive, skull-shattering strike to the left side of his head. The angle of the wounds suggests he was attacked by multiple assailants using different Hyksos weapons. He was captured and executed without mercy. The state of his body suggests he died far from home. His mummy was embalmed in a hurry, without the elaborate rituals befitting a pharaoh. There was no removal of the brain, no careful wrapping. It seems his followers retrieved his body from the battlefield and rushed it back to Thebes to prevent its desecration by the enemy. His death was a devastating blow to the Theban cause. The brave king had fallen. The rebellion, it seemed, was over. But the story of Seqen-Enur-Dau does not end in defeat. It is a testament to the idea that a legacy is not defined by one's final battle, but by the fire it ignites in others. His brutal death became a rallying cry. It transformed a war of territory into a sacred mission of vengeance and national pride. His queen, Ahotepai, was a formidable leader in her own right. She held the kingdom together after his death, ensuring the flame of rebellion did not die out. She governed Thebes and prepared her sons to finish what their father had started. The curse of the Hyksos, the violence they inflicted upon the Egyptian king, had backfired. It had created a martyr. Seqen-Enur's eldest son, Kamose, took up his father's mantle. Fueled by grief and a burning desire for revenge, he launched a brilliant campaign, pushing the Hyksos further and further north. Inscriptions from his reign speak of his vow to rescue Egypt, which the Asiatics have divided. Kamose continued the fight, but he too would die before seeing its conclusion. The final victory would belong to Seqen-Enur's younger son, Ahmose-I. Having learned from his father's and brother's sacrifices, Ahmose led the unified Egyptian army in a final, decisive war. He besieged the Hyksos capital of Avaris, drove them out of Egypt entirely, and pursued them into their own lands in the Levant. Ahmose-I didn't just reclaim the north, he reunited the two lands and ushered in a new golden age. The New Kingdom? This was the era of Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, Akhenaten, and Tutankhamun. It was the age of empire, a period of unprecedented power, wealth, and cultural achievement. And it was all built upon the foundation of one man's sacrifice. Seqen-Enur-Dau, the king who died a horrific death on a forgotten battlefield, became the forefather of Egypt's greatest dynasty. His violent end was not a curse, but a catalyst. It was the turning point that forged a nation, inspired a generation, and launched an empire. His story reminds us that true courage is not about winning every battle. It's about standing up for what is right, even when faced with impossible odds. It's about planting a tree under whose shade you may never sit. Seqen-Enur-Dau's legacy is etched not just in stone, but in the very fabric of Egyptian history. He is the brave king, the warrior pharaoh, whose fierce spirit and ultimate sacrifice paved the way for glory. His is a story of how the darkest moments can give birth to the brightest futures, a timeless lesson on courage, destiny, and the enduring power of a legacy forged in fire and blood. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the past. If you found this story as captivating as we did, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real legends from history. We'll see you next time.